Holly, and this is Demetrius, and Ed over here, and Andrew who's filming. We're from Disability Advocates of Kent County, and we make up a group called CYAN, which stands for the Community Youth Advocacy Network. And what we're trying to do is get young people, ideally around 18 to 30, involved in community organizing. The thing that we found when we started doing that, though, is that it's also a really good way to sort of foster communication between people who are, really traditionally physically disabled and people who might either have more invisible disabilities or be considered able-bodied. We're doing some really cool stuff like trips to Lansing to talk with legislators, contacting our representatives about bills that are trying to be passed that might really impact the community. So if you guys are interested in that kind of thing, you should definitely come out because it's super cool and you'll have fun. And sometimes we have food, and who doesn't like food? So what's going to happen is I'm going to tell you, come on in guys, you're fine. You're fine. What's going to happen today is that Demetrius and I are just going to share our stories a little bit about overcoming challenges with a disability. And you might think, well, that really doesn't apply to me because I am not traditionally disabled. Really though, I think you'll find that the heart of our stories though is one, learning to advocate for yourself, and two, really finding perseverance to push through challenges that you might encounter. And those are things that, those are tools that are really important to people whether you're disabled or not, so you might be able to relate to our stories in that way. I'm 25, and as you can see, I'm a little mobility challenged. I have cerebral palsy. In my case, that was created by the fact that my mother had appendicitis when she was pregnant with me. And she went to the doctor several times, complaining of pain and that kind of thing, and it didn't get diagnosed. So by the time they figured it out, she was already in labor with me, and I was born 10 weeks premature. I was 2 pounds 7 ounces, which is a pretty tiny baby. So my mom at that time became a stay-at-home mother and really devoted her life to taking care of me. And because of that, I had a pretty idyllic childhood. I didn't really have a whole lot of challenges because, to be completely honest, my mother did everything for me. She picked out my clothes and put them on me. She helped me shower. She picked out my food and cut it for me. If I was being bullied at school, she would go to the class and yell at the kids, which was equal parts helpful and embarrassing. And that worked out really well. I mean, I grew up in a pretty small town in Byron Center, and I kind of carved out a group of friends that were good to me and had help from my mother and things were okay. The problem is that I went through that school system until I was 18, and then it was time to go to college, and I couldn't tie my shoes, I couldn't cut my food, and I couldn't have my mother go to college with me, so what was I supposed to do? And I really was in some trouble at that point. And another thing that had happened around that time is that they had an advisor there that was specifically targeted to help people with disabilities get the help that they needed at the college. So he came around and asked me for all the accommodations that I might think I needed, and he committed to getting those in place for me. And in the time period between when I graduated and when I started, they fired him and got rid of the whole department he was working for. So I started college and I had no help at all. And I mean, I couldn't get them to clear the sidewalks in the wintertime. I didn't know how to get to class by myself because I have some directional challenges. I have a hard time telling left from right. They would ask in class if someone would take notes for me, and no one would volunteer, so I didn't have a note taker. I cried pretty much every day for that first year of college. And I think at a certain point, I stopped crying and I started getting angry and decided that if they weren't going to give it to me, I was going to have to advocate for what I needed. Yeah, so I had to learn really how to fight for the things that I needed, and I ended up making a video of things that they were doing that were breaking the law and sending it to news organizations and things like that. Ultimately, I ended up transferring from that school. I started going to GRCC, and I did that for 2 years, and that was a lot better experience. Then I transferred to Grand Valley, and by the time I got there, I had enough independent living skills to be able to live on campus, which was a great experience. And I finished my bachelor's degree there in English literature, and my master's degree I got there also, and I finished that in December. So really what happened is that I went from being someone who wanted to quit college in the first 3 months and thought I would never ever make it, to somebody who went to college for 6 years and has 2 degrees. And I think really what it comes down to is realizing that I'm a person who is worthy of being in any environment, educational or personal or otherwise. And if that means I need a little extra help, then that's not something I have to feel shame about. That's something that I have the right to fight for if somebody's not going to give it to me willingly. And I think learning to advocate for myself in an educational environment has helped me to be more self-assured generally in my entire life, and to realize that it's not okay if people treat me badly. It's not okay if people disregard me. It's not okay if people intrinsically think that I'm less than because I can't walk. Really, all it is I can't walk and I need a little extra help, and if I can get that, I'm fine. So you might look at me and say, well, I've never been in a wheelchair, I've never had those struggles, I've never felt that kind of pain, but you might know what it's like to be disregarded or feel like somebody's not listening to you, or you're not getting what you need, or you're not being heard. And I think it's important to realize that we can all advocate for ourselves and each other, and that's what's really good about CYAN too, is it's people who are disabled and people who are not fighting for each other. So that's what I have to say about that. Dimitri?